Let me give you a little bit of background about the partnership that we have created between Michigan State University and Smith Group's JJR, Mike Medici's Senior Vice President there, and why we created this partnership to really focus on the T-shaped individual. You got to look at what Michigan State University is doing to really begin to ingrain this as part of the core of what we do. First of all, at Michigan State University, we have a vision that students will be known. Graduates of Michigan State will be known for the depth and breadth of their individual abilities. And we've heard a lot about individual abilities at this meeting so far, as well, and most importantly, the power of their collective intelligence. And I think although the words are a little bit different, you ought to see the T in that particular vision. We want graduates at Michigan State University who can lead multifunctional teams. And you heard Susan mention it this morning. You've heard it come up several times in these conversations in order to address the kind of complex global problems that we all are very familiar with. And finally, we want graduates with the competencies, and Andy just mentioned a set of those types of competencies, and we have them at Michigan State as well, that are sought not only by employers, but at Research One institutions, which many of us are, by graduate and graduate professional programs. So what this is all about is what we can only do through partnership. Because change of the magnitude that we have been talking about, and there was a question on this earlier today, requires that we consider what we teach, how we teach it, and what we're about in this particular conversation, where we teach, and we need to understand who we are teaching. Because at Michigan State University, as Loanna Simon mentioned last night, we got 48,000 students, each with a unique pathway that they're going to navigate the institution. When we began to think about our conversation about space, what is the space at Michigan State like that would promote this? It needed to foster interdisciplinary collaboration. It needed to provide a space, as Phil Gardner mentioned earlier, that provided virtual interactions, those visible, invisible kind of walls, and it needed to promote, and all of you in higher education are very familiar with this, active and engaged learning, because we've all been focused on that in part. The space needed to be designed through a creative and iterative process that involved designers, educators, students from multiple disciplines, and the space had to foster, and we had a question to this earlier, research and experimentation on this concept of a T-shaped individual. So one day over coffee, Mike and I sat down and we asked ourselves the question, would the space that we designed to create interdisciplinary opportunities be any different than what we think about in any other kind of educational system? We were fortunate to bring into this Steelcase and Sextant Group as collaborators in this initiative. Steelcase for their additional design expertise, as well as the fact that they provided us with an environment to play this out at Michigan State University. And Sextant Group, because the amazing vision they have of how technology can be used differently in education to promote learning. We then recruited faculty from multiple disciplines across the institution, disciplines that don't always talk to each other normally, as well as brought graduate and undergraduate students in. What I want to show you now, before Mike gets up, is a short clip of what this looked like on the day that we played this out.
The education world really is a transition point right now. What product am I trying to put out at the end of the day?
So the question becomes, how do you create spaces that inspire and support curricular and instructional change? And then what is it that you want the outcome for students to be?
We're bringing in about a dozen of our leaders and planners, along with about 25 plus faculty, administration, students from Michigan State. And we're going to talk about and draw and brainstorm, trying to envision the next world.
We should try to be creating some central academic corridor, some central focus for the academic part of the university. So we could imagine having a technology commons or technology sandbox where students could get supported.
The benefit for MSU is really to advance our ability to create innovative learning spaces for our students.
The notion of rethinking the existing buildings on campus, as well as beginning to imagine new buildings and how they'll begin to change that organization. That's what's coming out of this workshop that's pretty exciting.
We need to transition from spaces to places. Space is empty. Places are purposeful, they're full. Here's where player interaction is going to happen.
If we get these students for this period of time in their lives, and we have all of this opportunity to begin to shape the out-of-class experiences of students and make these meaningful, and the in-class experience of students and make those meaningful, we've got something here, and we're taking it seriously. And if we can do it here, people believe it can be done anywhere.
So with Michigan State, Doug and I put together 5 different teams to look at this thing from a different perspective. So we had 5 themes. One was this campus constellation, which was the big picture, the 30,000-foot level. The other was the transformers. So we looked at this space issue based on the fact that we had an existing chemistry lab, or chemistry lecture hall, which for 430 students, which needed a lot of work going forward. We had a no boundaries group, which of course, worked around their name and went outside all the boundaries and changed the world for us. We did a day in the life group, which was mostly students that took this from a student aspect, and then lastly the academy, which was a faculty-focused group. As you heard last night, the faculty is a major part of moving forward in this. So some of the things we conceptualized and came through was really a wonderful group going forward. And you see to the left side was some of this that talked about impasses becoming obstacles, using the T-shape to transforming that into solutions as we go forward. So for instance, colleges could become maybe an overlay of Jim's process of systems as we go forward. We talked a little bit about teaching matters and teaching versus research and what the administration might need to look through in terms of going forward. And then the diagram to the upper right started talking about these real interesting spaces. And again, as architects, this was really important for us to try to understand how can we promote these T-shaped students and these interactions from faculty to student in a better way. So it was a very exciting process. And then as architects, we needed to visualize this. We're very visual, and so we needed to try to diagram what this might be. So we worked with the T, and of course we had to create our own sort of interpretation of the T, which you see on the bottom. And that really sort of helped us walk through that process year by year and to see the kind of growth that would occur. And again, this just begins to start that process, which I think is very important. And I think that point was made earlier that it doesn't stop. It just keeps going on from graduate level and continues on from there. And that's really important to understand that, again, we're trying to create spaces that will begin this path forward. Some of the things we talked about in terms of synthesizing all of these ideas into some conclusions at the end. And so from the institutional standpoint, obviously changing the faculty's incentives. Okay, that was the thing that came out. The No Boundaries group had no problem pointing that out. Secondarily, we needed to look at the systems-based learning. Again, trying to change how these curriculum was set up, and that was obvious. Lastly, the students needed to be, and so the students came through with this and said, I know how to go through this process today, but now you're going to change the rules. How do I go about that? So we need to keep that in mind as we go forward in that process. Then looking at the quality of the physical environment. And again, we looked at these different effects that, or different areas in which students would be working during the day. The work environment, the make environment, the flexible environment, the research. Still lecture is part of the process, and then this interaction, this meeting that would happen. And on the right-hand side, you saw this 430 student lecture hall, and how we might be able to evolve that over time to become really the right kind of size, the right kind of interaction, the right kind of breakout spaces, as you see to the other sides. And that was sort of diagrammed on your left-hand side with this idea that lecture and breakout in different spaces that were important for us. Then the Kickstarter in all this, which came out of this, was this idea of this innovation center and creating a space that both had the faculty in mind and how to move faculty from where they are today, give them the tools to make it better, whether it's recording studios or coaching or just sort of interaction space. And then the students who could be there and the research that could go on in that space. And then you move that to that campus process where it would be the starter. And then the whole idea is that this would grow throughout the whole campus. So it was a really exciting opportunity for us as we work through this, and we hope that we'll be able to explore some more today.
Last, in very brief summary, in your packets there's a little flyer that will give you a link to the website. If you're interested in reading the entire document that flowed from this, it is available on the website at the link here. And there's a lot that's flowing from this because, as most of you know in education, space is one thing. Helping faculty and students learn how to utilize that space effectively is an entirely different thing. So thank you.